Final Fantasy VIII originally released on PlayStation 1 in 1989, but is the remaster, which you can tell. So the fact that the characters are upscaled, but the backgrounds aren't, so they look like they're in a different dimension. Squall has an entire new character model, because reasons, and the frame rate is now 15 FPS everywhere, including in the menus for combat, which, why would you do that? Especially when it comes to Squall's limit break works, but I'll get to that part later. Final Fantasy VIII already had the herculean task in the follow-up Final Fantasy VII, or an herculean task, maybe the idea is to get coast on it, but in reality decided to just change everything. Everything. Tell you what to think about Final Fantasy? Change that too. The main premise being that in the world of... Actually, I think about it, the world doesn't have a name. Either way, there are essentially military academies referred to as gardens, with the story following the main character of Squall. And despite having an entire party, he is the central focus here. Like, there aren't even really big moments for the other party members to have. It is mainly Squall the star of the show. But when it comes to Garden, the main objective for each student is to reach the highest rank of Seed. For some reason spelled capital S, 2 lowercase e's, then a capital D, with their main goal just essentially being a mercenary group. Or is it? Because there might be more going on than things seem to be. The narrative doesn't truly start until you're on the first main mission as a Seed, being the simple task of liberate an entire country. They might be getting paid huge for this, I'm just saying. But thrown in the mix are these segments where the party have their mind for some reason placed into the bodies of these mysterious people referred to as Laguna, Kyros, and Ward. Why is it going on? Not even the party knows, but the fact that the first time it happens, you have the party constantly giving their comments on the scenario they're being shown, on top of the confusion of it going on, and the fact that it's also something the characters constantly bring up, and at times use the information learned from these sequences to their advantage. Overall, when it comes to a narrative, it's probably passable. Like, the biggest issue I have is more the fact of there are just many things in a narrative that either should be big moments but don't really add much to it, or there's stuff that I don't want to say is technically explained poorly, more so they don't really explain it at all, period. Including even major things that I can only guess how it's supposed to function because the narrative doesn't, and there is an issue where there are some things lost during the localization, whether it be just some tweaks to Squall's characterization, or the fact that even aspects of how the Big Bad's plan works is apparently elaborated in the Japanese script, but not by much really, so not a whole lot's missing. On top of the fact that they also use the Final Fantasy Ultimania guide in places to fill in gaps the game itself doesn't do. Fantasy VIII is the entry that's probably very notorious for how often fans constantly have theories to try and bolster a narrative just because they're so lacking in places, and I will not use it as fact whatsoever, hell no. So, just one of those things that you can see why the fan base try and look at the pieces on top of the fact of the game's director, Rukatase, can't discredit some of the theories since he was not the sole writer of it, so there are some things that the fans say could be plausible, but could also just be coincidence and not really mean much. Granted, the big theory people use revolving around the main villain, honestly, I never really understood how people came to that conclusion. Squall himself gets so much hate as a protagonist, but I think he actually works for the story. Granted, it helps that the story revolves around him. So like I said, while the party members don't get a whole lot, they do a lot to flesh out Squall, even with localization, which people really over-exaggerate how much it changes his personality, but like I said, it works. I do like him as protagonist. Like, don't get the amount of hate Squall gets for that, including people complaining that, oh, he's a reluctant hero. Yeah, why is that inherently a bad thing, especially when they go over his characterization, his reasoning? Like Final Fantasy V, Bard's a reluctant hero. What about that? For the gameplay, which is probably the most make or break game when it comes to Final Fantasy VIII, the Junction system. This game will really explain to you several times how it works, with the gist being you draw spells or gather them from many different methods, and then you can attach the spells directly to your stats, including even to your status effects, so your regular attacks can apply status effects, or change the element of it to apply it to somebody who has boss weak to something. You can use that to your advantage. And the concept of it is rather simple, although I will say some aspects are explained too early, like before you even have the opportunity to even do it, and I wish that wasn't the case, and I wish they held out some of the tutorials later. But there is also this computer that, granted, you may not always be able to get to, but it does allow you to reread all the information, and you are advised to read the information early on in the game. The issue with the Junction concept comes from how you get the magic and how Junction's even able to start, because you can't Junction anything unless you have a GF, referred to as Guardian Force, essentially the summons from Final Fantasy franchise. Well, a GF will come to a character, they can't Junction anything, and since a limited amount of GFs, especially if you're not going for the side ones you can get, there are so many characters in your party that trying to keep them all stocked up isn't exactly the most possible thing, especially since GFs need to learn the ability to junction certain stats, which honestly I don't understand what even put that there. Meaning the fact of you can get a GF that may be able to junction match to HP, but maybe not strength, junction match to spirit, but maybe not speed, and stuff like that, where you then need to try and you can use items to get them new abilities, but they can only learn a certain amount, not helping the fact that almost all of their skill sets taken up by their default abilities, so there's not much wiggle room to try and increase how much they can do. And if not having enough GS with certain abilities wasn't a problem enough, you then have how you get magic, being many methods. You can draw from enemies, which requires a high magic stat in order to even do, because drawing can fail for some reason, and the lower your magic stat is, you're able to draw, but you'll draw small amounts at a time, as opposed to high amounts. But you also need magic to junction it to your magic stat to increase your ability to draw, but your GF needs the ability to junction magic to begin with, or else you can't even do it to begin with. See the problem here. Other methods to gain magic also includes refining it from items, or turning cards into items, which you can then turn into magic. Although when it comes to that, how do you get cards? Well, you can do certain side objectives, getting side GS that will give you their card, which are basically one and done cards, so you get to choose, do you want to use it for getting more material, or you can use it for this game's big mini game, Triple Triad, an entire card game that they really went all out for, and is fully optional to do, and there's many different rule sets, everything from how it works. I just can't be bothered because it's alright. It's an alright card game, but not anything I really want to do, let alone be something to, oh, I'll just grind out and get cards and turn them into magic. Like at that point, probably just get draw magic because it's more guaranteed compared to it. There's the issue needing high magic to be able to draw faster, but it's still one of those things that I just rather draw magic instead. There are also draw points of the world that will respawn, although there's some hidden ones that don't respawn, but they give you a powerful spell way early on than you normally would, so there's benefit to getting those. Like I said, these are your main methods of getting magic, aid and magic jump to your stats, because your levels only make monsters more powerful, with the upside being the more powerful the monster, the more powerful the magic they have, and it changes what items they drop. But other than that, you're making enemies stronger by leveling up, and there will be at points where you do start leveling up fast, or handing out experience fast. You also need AP from battle, which you get in order to buff up and level up your GFs. So combat is important. Just because enemies get stronger doesn't mean you can neglect it, but it is a system that may at points make you think you want to not do combat, but there's more benefits than there are downsides. Either way, those three methods are how you get magic. Those are your main ways. While I do like the fact there is variety and options, It's the fact of it's the most important thing you need to have, and so you get many party members, you may feel the need to have more magic and to have them per character because you don't know what you need. You can also only carry 32 spells total, which sounds like a lot, but there's 49 spells you can actually junction to your stats, so you can't even carry all of them per character, and each spell can be carried up to 100 stocks, which you can spend in combat and are points you want to, but spending them also means lowering that stat, albeit not by a whole lot per stock, but it's one of those things that make you paranoid about the whole mechanic, even if it's not all that bad, but it's one of those things where your main thing that checks your character, you don't want to re-spend it at the same time, because some spells are very rare to come across, so you don't want to use it as an actual spell, you want to use it in the junction. But if you're not using the spell, then it highlights the fact of why you make the magic to begin with. There are some neat things to try to alleviate frustration, like being able to automatically switch the junction from one character to another, in case a character you haven't used for a while has a moment you need to use them for combat, which is handy. Although any spells that get overstocked from the swapping will be erased. I mean, there were times where, because of every character having max stock of a magic, and when I swapped them back, the game just erased all their magic, starting them back from zero. And I mentioned before in the story bit about, oh, since you have this whole section with Laguna and everything, when it comes to Laguna section, the game can't assume which character will take the role of Kyros and Ward, so it will just unequip all of your junctions for your party members every single time on Laguna section, which gets increasingly annoying that your entire build gets removed because the game can't assume who will take the role. Squall, since he's always in the party, will be assumed, so that's fine, but everyone else, nope, it will just unequip them every time. Despite the variety and everything they try to do with the junction mechanic, the way the game is designed just doesn't go with it. There's so many party members to equip, there's probably not enough GFs to go around, you want to maximize your party members' abilities, and the whole entire fact of junction change means trying to get magic for everyone, means you might just accidentally erase their magic. The Laguna sections completely unequip your GFs and junctions. It's a whole entire idea where it feels like they thought of one part, but then neglected how it has to then interact with every other facet of the game, making it to become way more frustrating. On top of the whole entire aspect of gaining magic to begin with can just be boring to do. Yes, this remaster has the ability to triple animation speed and also just give you all the spells in a push of a button, but if someone has to cheat in order to pretty much get the most out of the game, pretty much highlights the problem with it. It's just one of those things that I believe one developer stated how they believe Junction was a mechanic that was way ahead of its time. But like, please correct me, Mama, please correct me. I have never seen any other game ever try to do the Junction system at all. Like, I've seen other games like the Saga franchise use Final Fantasy II's mechanics, but the Junctions of Final Fantasy VIII only exist within Final Fantasy VIII. And when I say make or break, I mean the fact of how you set up your junctioning can pretty much dictate how your playthrough will go. My first playthrough, I didn't know anything. I just played as natural as I would, which meant a lot of drawing magic, which was painfully slow because I was playing the PS1 original version on the PS3, which whole entire thing, but it just became slow, was boring, and I didn't know what spells would be best for what thing, so I went with whatever I felt was it, and it kind of left my party being underpowered in certain segments, especially in the game's finale, where my party was just getting completely stomped. I didn't know where to get more powerful spells to junction them to because I wasn't really using a guide a whole lot, so it was just pretty much at a loss, and I made a massive mistake of level grading character to level 100 thinking it would help, when I realized I made the final boss at level 100. Whoops. But in this playthrough, I had way more of an idea what I'm doing, and especially after years of seeing people talking about Final Fantasy VIII, there were some tips that I remembered, which caused this playthrough to basically at points be either a smooth ride, or by the time of Disc 3, I was just annihilating everything, because at that point my characters were just complete peak power. They weren't like maximum super boss worthy, but like they could handle anything coming at them, and getting a game over was only if I was literally just being careless or was fighting a super boss level threat. What spells you get, what you junction, will dictate how you feel about the combat. If you get good junction and match figure out what you're doing, you probably have a good time. If you don't know what you're doing and get frustrated, you'll probably just end up miserable with the mechanic like I was in my first playthrough. But this one, it was a more smooth ride, but I'm not gonna exactly say the mechanic was good. There's so many things it fails to interact with when it comes to the game. The aspect that Final Fantasy VIII shines in, though, is exploration and side content, because there's just so much side stuff to get in this game, especially when you have full mobility on the overworld. Especially there are some GFs you get that do also add to the lore of the world and everything, which is super cool. On top of the fact that when it comes to gameplay, there are certain scenarios where how you do things can be different. Like one example I'll go with is this freaking giant robot spider. I mean a spider, but you get the idea, where it's like, hey, you could run from it. Or you can run from it, but you get caught multiple times. Or you can run from it, but manage to avoid it perfectly. Or you can just flat out destroy it. You can just take the time to fight it multiple times in one session to the point where it blows up, and you get rewarded with so much AP. The downside being, now random encounters turn back on for this segment, dick move, but also the fact you miss out on certain FMVs because they only played in a scenario where you're running away, which is a crazy thing Final Fantasy VIII lets you do. You can just have setups and situations what would have gotten you an FMV, but just entirely skip it because you went for a different option, which is something that I didn't really expect to ever let you do with how expensive FMVs had to be. With the draw and magic system, with how Junction works, you can have some fun scenarios like find the Minotaurs, where it's like, oh, gotta use a spell in order to help fight them, but using that spell one at a time will take so long. But you can draw the spell double from them, which allows you to cast 2 spells at one turn, which makes the process way faster, combining the stock I already had with the abilities that the spell they had from the boss that could draw from them, which is a cool aspect. There are some bosses that have even unique spells, even up to the end of the freaking game, that you can draw from the boss to use against them. Granted, your magic stat's not high, then your ability is gonna do jack all for damage, but hey, it's a thing you can freaking do. You can also use your GFs in combat in order to soak up damage, have their own HP, and honestly, I've never seen an enemy really take out a GF, so they can take a beating. But they all have the special ability you can use. Granted, it may lead to you potentially using them as a crutch, because since they do so much damage, it may think to just use them over proper junctioning. Proper junctioning is more important, even if it means that you're going to be summoning less and less. Especially in many scenarios, have a timer, and you don't want to have the GS animation play out for so long when that timer is going down. Another aspect of exploration is also the stuff you can get to upgrade your characters, and how they handle limit breaks this time around. When limit breaks are triggered, or they have a chance to trigger, if your character is low on HP, or use the aura spell, which each character's limit break being way more unique than anything I've really seen from the franchise, whether it be freaking Zell's duel that has an entire minigame associated with it, which is pretty entertaining to do, especially when you get later abilities and have so many options to do. You need to do it in like 8 seconds, but to maximize damage. Squall's a limit break that allows them to do a big combo, although not the fact that it's an RNG chance for the big limit break, but granted, if you had to pick the ability to choose, you just choose Lionheart and break the entire game. Squall's limit break also has the issue that because his thing is timing based, the frame rate being reduced in his remaster from the 60 FPS menus of the PlayStation 1 version means that if you're thrown off the rhythm of the limit break, you'll probably find yourself not maximizing the damage since you have less time to react. So despite having a visual indicator of when to push the button, you basically don't really know exactly what time to push the button properly, so following a rhythm will probably have you start screwing up the inputs, which kept happening to me if I slipped them at any point through the limit break, which is an issue of this remaster. Also, while I'm at it, for some reason they changed the movement where now I only move in 8 directions, opposed to full 3D analog movement, meaning movement can feel weird in this game when it came to being on the overworld. Selphie's ability uses a shuffle that has a chance of getting the end spell that one-shots anything in the entire freaking game. There's a low chance we can do it. Quistis, who's a blue mage that, listen here, putting a blue mage's ability behind a limit break has to be one of those why am I bother having a blue mage kind of things. I don't know, but it's such a unique gimmick. In order to get her blue magic, you gotta get it from special items you get either from enemies. So you have to fight enemies, take the items to use it on her. Like I said, a blue mage's abilities being a limit break, it's kind of a waste. Imagine how Zell's limit break has dual. You get more abilities by trying to get these magazines that teach them new combat moves, so you're on the lookout when you're doing stuff or to get them. Granted, with this remaster, the assets for the magazines and stuff are like so low quality compared to everything else that trying to find them actually becomes incredibly difficult at times, to the point of blinking you miss it kind of thing. So anything I went through, even without limit breaks, you have so many spells you can just do interesting stuff like Meltdown that will make it so your physical attacks deal more damage and everything. You can just start casually doing triple casts of the spell freaking Meteor and just go to town enemies. And I swear late in the game, enemies just love spamming Meteor on me. They're jerks about it. But it's the fact that with the stock system of magic and stuff like triple spell, you can just do a lot with the magic in this game. But since you're Junction the magic, it may dissuade you from actually doing it, since your stats matter more. By the end of the game, I'm not using spells or GS or anything. I'm just having Squall smack things so hard he does 8,000 damage, and if he does Lionheart, he does multiple hits of all 9 damage. And it's like, the most powerful thing in the game is Junctioning your strength stat, because it doesn't take up resources, it takes up magic, but you're not going to use the magic in combat, so you're just doing so much. There's one character who does benefit from having a huge pool of magic, because one of her limit breaks buffs the hell out of it at one point, but it's one of those things that it's kind of the exception when it comes to magic. I just find it hard to judge the combat, everything I said. It's a make or break. If you manage to figure out things and do good, get good spells, you'll probably do fine. That's why many people say, oh, play with a guide. I'm playing with a guide. It kind of means I'm not enjoying the game itself, because I'm constantly looking away in order to look at that guide to see what I should do and actually play it kind of thing. So yes, a guide can benefit you greatly in Final Fantasy VIII, but trying to play it naturally, you may end up having a bad time like I did in my first playthrough, where it was just not knowing what to do, what to get, and forgetting certain junction mechanics because the game explained them before I had the opportunity to do them, or not realizing that how many of my GFs just lacked basic abilities because the GFs can just lack basic abilities. How does one GF you can get that flat out gives you no ability to junction your magic to anything? A GF, it doesn't give you anything for junctioning. And I keep sending around junctioning. The confusion here. Overall, I'm still not even sure I put Final Fantasy VIII. Originally, I just thought it was a bad game. It wasn't awful or truly terrible or anything like that. A lot of people say, but I didn't think it was good. And here, I still don't think it's good, because the reason I wasn't more frustrated was because, oh, I used a 3x speed to make drawing magic faster. I used it also because I was like, oh, here's a draw point for a very good spell. I can just use 3x speed to move around really fast in order to freaking get the magic faster and use it to my characters. And yeah, it helped out. It's one of those things where if I'm not playing the remaster, I'm playing the PS1 version, would I have taken the time to actually do that and essentially grind out magic? I'm not grinding out triple Triad, which many people seem to advocate for as some solution, but either way, the end point is you're either grinding magic or drawing, grinding a card game, or grinding the draw spots, because you want your characters to be the best they can be, especially for later in the game where challenges start wrapping up and up in difficulty. Especially like I said, you will be getting more and more XP as you go, and since Squall is the central person in your party, he's going to be the highest level, and the enemies will start stacking up against his level because of that hunter aspect, so you need the magic in order to keep up with the rising challenge. When the junction system and auto mechanics don't really complement each other. Like, it's an idea that they thought of one aspect, but not for the rest. The exploration, like I said, is great with the stuff you can do and the more unique boss fights and unique requirements for them. Also the fact that there's no equipment in this game because of the junction system, so it can't rely on equipment because junctioning is your equipment. That's your main method of everything. Also the fact that you also need to get these magazines in order to upgrade your weapons, on top of the materials needed to upgrade said weapon as well, which, granted, the game has a backup plan where even if you don't get side GFs or don't get the magazines, you will be able to get them later in around like Disc 3 for the weapons and Disc 4 for the GFs, so they do give you a backup plan if you miss some of them, although there's one that you should probably get immediately, Odin, because of what it leads to. I won't say what it leads to, but effing do it, even if this is probably the most sorriest Odin in the entire franchise. Like I said, I don't really know where to put Final Fantasy VIII. Like, I had a better time this time, but like, it's because of the fact I could speed up the animations by 3 times speed. Should I really compliment the idea of, oh, the remaster allowed me to essentially hit the fast forward button? And it's like, sure, I could praise it like that. I can also question, why should I need a fast forward button to begin with when playing Final Fantasy VIII? So yeah, I'll just probably say that Final Fantasy VIII is probably okay. That's all I gotta say on that one, really. Although, if I don't know, the Extreme is the best final boss trick in the entire franchise, and Eyes on Me is the best intro song in the franchise, and I will hear no other options. And Man Machine Gun is the second best battle theme in the franchise. What's number 1? That's left for you to freaking suffer over not knowing.